The natural instinct of humans is to learn. From making cave paintings to splitting atoms and going to outer space, we know that knowledge is power. Now humans have learnt a lot, and what one man knows can be spread to the rest of humanity by simply writing it down. We have made a great communication system with the pen and paper, and it has enlightened humanity. But do you think this great system has a limitation? Our communication method relies on the fact that someone has sight. We live in a world where our sight is our most important sense. Imagine the life of a person that does not have sight, and therefore cannot receive the gift of knowledge the way a person with vision can. Blind people had to go through many struggles to learn things at school, if they ever went to school.
When I went to school, blind people didn't go to school. There was no law saying that a blind child had to go to school or could go to school. So my first classroom was a furnace room in a local elementary school with a couple other peers. And when I got to college, they didn't want to let me in because they figured blind people I was just wasting my time.
This was the reality for blind people. They were very dependent on friends and family. Valentine Howie, the founder of the first blind school in the world, himself wrote that sighted people always doubted the capabilities of the blind. The goal of a blind person is to live an equal and happy life along with their sighted neighbors and friends. To truly achieve this goal, we have to understand that with proper training and opportunity, they can succeed and live independently. A change was needed, and this change came when a young blind teenager named Louis Braille invented the system that changed the world and gave light to the dark tunnel that was blindness. This new system was easy to use, and it empowered the blind to take control of their future. Let's take a look at the remarkable story of Louis Braille to understand how effective and amazing Braille is. Louis Braille was born in a small village called Couvray, near Paris in France. Louis wasn't born blind, but he accidentally blinded himself while playing with the sharp tool. Louis Braille received a full scholarship to study at the Royal Institution for Blind Youth in Paris. The institution had a library, a first for a blind school. When Louis tried to read one of the books, he was disappointed. The books were made by imprinting massive letters into the book. The problem with this is that it is impractical and it takes too long to trace your finger around each letter. A French army captain, Charles Barbier, invented a night writing system using dots and dashes to communicate with his soldiers during the night. Night writing uses 12 dots and dashes and is based on sounds. This system had multiple flaws, but Louis did not give up on the idea and sought to make the system better. Louis sat down in the summer of 1821 and simplified the 12 dots and dashes by making it have 6 dots to represent one letter, allowing it to fit under one fingertip. Louis also made a system based on letters instead of sound because writing by sounds is very hard and also impractical. This is how an amazing communication tool for the visually impaired was invented, but this system received resistance from the director of the institute, Armand Dufault. He thought that Braille would eliminate the dependency of blind on sighted teachers. He instead adopted a British system invented by John Alston of the Asylum for the Blind in Glasgow. He put a blanket ban on Braille, but the students of the institute rebelled against it and they continued to embrace Braille. Finally, Dufault bowed to the will of the students and lifted the ban. That allowed Braille to spread all over the world. Now, let us learn the Braille alphabet with Miss Anne.
So when Louis Braille did his first 10 letters, he only used 1, 2, 4, and 5. And these are all unique. So A is just dot 1, and then I'm going to space. B is 1 and 2. C is 1 and 4. D is 1, 4, 5. E is 1, 5. F is 1, 2, 4. G is 1, 2, 4, 5. It looks like a little square. H is like a chair. It's 1, 2, 5. I is 2, 4. And J is 2, 4, 5. So those are A through J. And he came up with those. And then he said, well, what am I going to do now? So he was pretty smart. He went back to A again and he added a dot 3. So now we have 20 letters of the alphabet. And he says, now what am I going to do? And he said, okay, for the next letters, I'm going to use 3 and 6.
The first version of Braille didn't have a W because the French alphabet doesn't include W. Louis then made W dots 2, 4, 5, and 6. Here are all the Braille letters. This is what Miss Ann taught at the California School for the Blind for 20 years. Let's take a jump to modern day and look at how Braille is taught today. How does one teach Braille?
That's a great question. When you teach Braille, it's really like thinking about teaching print to a sighted student. You don't teach Braille to a student when they're in school. Teaching Braille starts at home, right? When you're in preschool and even before that. For our visually impaired students, they don't have the ability to observe and learn to read print and understand what print is like their sighted peers, because sighted students learn through incidental learning. They can observe and see what's happening in their environment. But with visually impaired students, we have to be explicit. We have to bring the world into them and expose them intentionally to objects and things around them to get them excited about learning. And that's the same with reading Braille. We really want our young Braille readers to spend a lot of time exploring with their hands, a lot of tactile exploration, a lot of tactile discrimination. So we begin with a lot of play with different objects, toys, so that their young fingers can start to tell how things feel, the texture, if things feel the same or different, smooth and rough, big and small. And then directionality is really important, moving from left to right. We find that with all readers. It's the prerequisites to reading, left to right, top to bottom, being able to turn a page. This is kind of like a visually impaired person's pen and paper. So what I have here is the slate. It's a long, this is plastic, but they have them in metal. So a slate uses a piece of paper that you clamp into the middle, and then you use it with a stylus. A stylus has a very sharp, pointy end to it, and you poke the Braille letters into these cells. They're very tiny, so you really have to be well familiar with the Braille code in order to use a slate and stylus, because the other trick to it is you're doing it backwards, so that when you take your paper out and you flip it over and read it, it's going to be the right side. So you're kind of having that mental note that you're writing backwards so that you're able to read it.
Since Braille is easy to use and learn, it is the official communication method for the visually impaired all over the world. We celebrate World Braille Day on January 4th to honor Louis Braille and his accomplishment. Braille has empowered blind people to stand independently, as the unemployment rate for blind people has shrunk from 90% to 70% in the United States. 90% of blind people who are employed know Braille. Braille has been evolving over the years, but there are many challenges ahead. Here are the challenges that are still remaining today. Braille code is one of the most significant inventions in history that remains the key to understanding for millions of blind people all over the world. This is the story of Braille code and its inventor, Louis Braille.